Hi everyone, welcome to our first module of Anatomy and Physiology 2. This first module, we're going to be covering the endocrine system. The endocrine system is going to act as this internal regulatory system, and it's similar to the regulatory actions of the nervous system. Therefore, the endocrine system, it will help to maintain the internal environment of the body within normal ranges. In other words, basically, the endocrine system, it will work tirelessly in trying to maintain homeostasis. And if you guys remember what homeostasis is basically trying to maintain this internal equilibrium. So it is safe to say that the endocrine system will work together with the nervous system to monitor and adjust the body's physiological activities. Therefore, in this first learning outcome, we will be comparing both organ systems. So let's get started. Like I said previously, the homeostatic regulation is going to involve the coordination of the activities of organs and systems throughout the body, and this will be done by the endocrine and the nervous systems. And the activities of these two systems, they're going to be coordinated closely, and actually their effects are typically complementary. And what does this mean? It means that one will be able to help the other. If you think about it, they both want the same thing. What is it that they want? Well, both want a healthy, productive body. So they will work together for this objective. In general, the nervous system, it will produce this short term, which usually only lasts a few seconds, that are going to be very specific responses to certain environmental stimuli. Remember that the nervous system receives information from receptors, and this information will travel through an action potential, which is a pretty fast, as it's measured actually in milliseconds, and it will end at a specific effector organ where it will cause a response to that initial stimulus. In contrast, the endocrine gland cells, they're going to release these chemicals, which are called hormones. So these hormones, they're going to be released into the bloodstream, and it's going to be distributed throughout the body. Now, these hormones, they're going to alter metabolic activities of many different tissues and organs simultaneously. And how is this possible? Well, since the hormones are going to travel through blood vessels and the blood vessels are spread throughout the body, then it makes sense that it will be able to affect different organs and tissues everywhere in the body. In fact, these hormonal effects, they may not be apparent immediately, as they need actually some time to be able to travel along the blood vessels. But when they appear, they often actually last and persist for days. And why is this? Well, because the hormones, they might still be present in the blood vessels and they don't go away that fast. And as you can imagine, this response pattern makes the endocrine system particularly effective in regulating certain processes that are ongoing, that last a while, like, for example, growth and development. And in other words, if we want to summarize or tag a definition to the endocrine system and the nervous system, we can call them the two bosses of our body, because without them talking to each other and making decisions based on what they are sensing, then our body would not be able to reach homeostasis. At a first glance, when we look and try to compare the nervous system and the endocrine system, we usually are able to distinguish them. We all know that the nervous system is made up of the brain, the spinal cord, that's the central nervous system, and then we have the peripheral nervous system, which are all the nerves that exit the spinal cord. And then we also have the autonomic nervous system, for example. So all these are part of the nervous system. And then we have organs that are part of the endocrine system. Yet, when we are going to view in detail, there are going to be instances in which the two systems are going to be difficult to separate anatomically and even functionally. So for example, the suprarenal medulla, which is located in the middle of the suprarenal gland right over here, is actually a modified sympathetic ganglion in which the neurons are going to secrete two different hormones, which are epinephrine and norepinephrine, into the blood. Now, the suprarenal medulla is therefore an endocrine structure that is functionally and developmentally part of the nervous system, whereas the hypothalamus, which is located right over here, so anatomically it is part of the brain, so nervous system, and this secretes a variety of hormones, and therefore it is functionally a part of the endocrine system. So this is how we sometimes get them confused, but this is also what makes them work together to achieve homeostasis. Let's dig into the endocrine system and talk a little bit more about it. So it will consist of these cells and tissues and organs that, like we said on the previous slides, will secrete hormones as their primary or even secondary function. And like the name says, the endocrine gland is going to be the major player in this system. So it makes sense. Endocrine system will have endocrine glands. Now these glands, they don't have a duct, so their primary function is going to be to secrete their hormones directly into the surrounding fluid. So the interstitial fluid, the lymphatic vessels that are part of the lymphatic system, and the blood vessels, they will be able to transport the hormones throughout the body. The endocrine system includes the pituitary gland, the thyroid gland, the parathyroid gland, the adrenal gland, and the pineal gland. And some of these glands, they have both endocrine and non-endocrine functions. So for example, the pancreas, which is also part of the endocrine system, it will have cells that function in the digestive system as well, and they will secrete hormones like insulin and glucagon, which will regulate the blood glucose levels. Now, there are other organs that will have endocrine functions. So, for example, the heart, the thymus, the adipose tissue, digestive organs, the kidneys, and the gonads, they will have endocrine function as well, besides the functions that we most commonly know about. So, for example, the heart is part of the cardiovascular system. And when we get to the heart, we will cover a little bit more in terms of its endocrine function. The thymus is part of the lymphatic system. So when we get to the lymphatic system, we will cover the functions of the thymus. Same thing for the kidneys. When we get to the urinary system, we will cover the functions of the kidneys. And we can talk about the part that belongs to the endocrine system as well, or which hormones the kidneys will release. But for this lecture, I want to focus on the organs and tissues that are located on the right side. So we will be talking about the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, the thyroid gland, the parathyroid gland, the adrenal gland, which can also be called suprarenal gland because it sits on top of the kidneys. We're going to be talking about the pancreas and the pineal gland. I do want to bring to your attention that even though the hypothalamus and the pancreas are on this list, they are not part of the endocrine organs, but they will have endocrine function, so that's why we want to talk about them. They actually have very important endocrine functions, which we will be covering. But the hypothalamus is part of the nervous system, and the pancreas is part of the digestive system. Like I said, the endocrine glands, they don't have ducts, but don't get them confused with the exocrine glands, which are part of the exocrine system. And these glands, they do have ducts, so they will use their ducts to release the contents. And examples of exocrine glands can include, for example, the sebaceous gland and the sweat glands of the skin. And these, they will release their contents onto the epithelial surface.